Welcome to another episode of Stoke Meter. Today we are honored to have Deepak Lalwani. Deepak is someone that I've known again for a number of years, and we were actually in grad school together back in New York City. And he has since that time started his own consulting business that has to do with all kinds of change management, organizational development. And all of you are wondering, what the crud is that?
Yeah.
And we'll get into what that is and then how that ties in. But then we're going to talk about all kinds of other good things here. So Deepak, welcome, man. It's been a long time.
It's been a really long time. Thanks for having me. We met just about 20 years ago at Columbia in New York. We both got our graduate degree in change management before it was a thing and before it got popular by companies such as ProSci and coming up with AdCar and things of the like. So, we have a lot to talk about.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. And for those of you that don't know what ProSci is, because every time when I heard that, I thought it was a science fiction thing. It's just a method of change management. And so what the heck are we talking about change management for? It's because if you think about life, that's pretty much what it is. It's constant change.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. And so that's why I thought, heck, we gotta talk to Deepak here, because that dude's seen a lot over the last couple decades here, and just wanted to dig in. Well, what can you tell us about yourself, man?
Yeah. So, I've, as a professional, I've been working as a change and transformation consultant now for almost 20 years. Like Maurice, I got a graduate degree in organization change as a focus. The degree was actually in organizational psychology. I still keep in touch with alumni from the program, so that's kind of neat and see where they've landed and what they're doing with their career. I know when we came out, the tech bubble burst and 9/11 happened and things were kind of interesting. They brought on a new mayor from the business side in New York, and he had 3 terms, Mayor Bloomberg. And so my work has to do with just working with organizations to put like structures and plans and processes in place to help kind of plan and manage a change a little more methodically, and with using approaches and tools to kind of make their life easier as opposed to making it a trauma or something that happens in an instant. So has a lot to do with planning and managing, initiatives that come through the pipeline with some of the executives you work with in companies.
I gotta ask you, man, and I know some of the answers just because I did this for a number of years as well, but what do you look at organizational change, and not all of them are always changing constantly. There's so many dynamics outside of the organization. And I'm wondering what you have seen has inhibited corporations from being effective, especially when they need to be. And then all of a sudden not all of a sudden, they just remain the same. What are some of the things that you've seen have led to the inability to change?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of research. You've obviously seen it. It's come up over and over in the literature that 70+% of companies that are going through these change or transformation projects ultimately fail. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that people attack work more from the technical aspects. Maybe there's a technical or a technology or enterprise technology implementation or project that someone is focused on, and they're focusing on the technical factors. Sometimes they're just focusing on kind of the business factors or business processes or business departments. And a lot of it, sometimes they don't take into account how long it takes to kind of work on the people side of things. And it comes up quite a bit. A friend of mine would always comment that, if we can bottle and have an approach around stakeholder management, you know, we'd be doing something else or living a, you know, a much more wealthier life. But the fact of the matter is, people have personalities, they have ups and downs, they have likes and dislikes. All of that kind of gets discounted, you know, and the idea is that, you know, we're supposed to shepherd a project from start to finish, rationally, not emotionally. Don't bring your emotions to work. And, you know, people often stay away from it because it's a touchy subject, and it's just hard to manage working through multiple personalities. And it comes up, it's a challenge. And how you reckon with it is you know, can be challenging.
Oh yeah, Gary, you've seen some of that, man, right?
Yeah, yeah. I have a question for you. I mean, you say change management, and that's obviously a pretty massive umbrella.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess my question is from with your consulting company or firm or whatever it is, you know, when you go to these companies, what kind of change or do you see the most that these corporations and companies are trying to implement, and why? Because I'm sure there's a fine balance between keeping what's working versus what's not.
Yeah.
What kind of trends do you see?
You know, I mean, to stay kind of billable and to stay marketable, I do a lot of enterprise technology implementation. So I'm sure, you know, for the past 20 years, we've been in this, the technology era. You know, we've seen the industrial revolution. Now we're seeing a technology revolution. And what we find is we're pushing out, you know, mobile and web-based technology at lightning speed.
Oh, yeah.
What people don't take into consideration is that it takes time to adopt to those new technologies. You know, you take LinkedIn, for example. You know, now there's an opportunity to have LinkedIn live events, and put up something live that people can relate to or attend. But there's so many features and functions coming out with new web-based technology that you're kind of unaware of what those changes are and how you can use them professionally and to your advantage. So, you know, I find that interesting because it always takes a backseat to a release, you know, as they call it on these enterprise technology projects, and that everyone's supposed to get it once that release happens. And it never works that way. Never. So, you know, I find that interesting. So the work I do is more around organizational change, where, you know, an organizational client will hire me and I'll bring in, and since it is a lot around enterprise technology deployments, and to a lesser extent, sometimes it's redesigning a business process or outsourcing a piece of work or standing up a shared services environment or restructuring a department. Those are the 4 or 5 kind of business transformations I see. But by and large, like, I see a lot of enterprise technology implementation. So, and a lot of it is, you know, back office systems, things such as SAP, Oracle, PeopleSoft, and to a lesser extent, the mid-sized companies bring in more software that's, you can say, relatable, closer to a consumer experience you would find with, say, something like Amazon. So enterprise technology in the cloud, such as Salesforce.com, as well as Workday, has been a lot more relatable and hot in the market that people use and grown accustomed to. So, you know, that's a lot of the work I do. It's been a lot of cross-industry work. And yeah, I bring in some proprietary tools, frameworks, and approaches to help them and their people get through some of that work.
It's kind of interesting to see, you know, how it used to be your large enterprise products, you know, they were server based, and, you know, to make a change across an industry or a corporation was a massive undertaking. That's and people right. will be running on different versions. And it's kind of exciting to see kind of that cloud movement to where now changes can be made in the background and that type of stuff. It's kind of interesting.
You're seeing a lot of that with like, Google, has clients, and, they've been so innovative. They've worked with some large, Fortune 500 companies where, they wouldn't be using Microsoft products such as Excel, PowerPoint, Word, but rather using Google-based tools that are cloud-based and that people can edit.
Yes.
Google Docs is a great example. Prior to that, you needed two sets of tools. You needed MS Word to write, but then, if you wanted to collaborate on a document, you'd have to have a screen share, something similar to Zoom or MS Teams. But with Google Docs, people can collaborate directly. It's got collaboration inherent in the tool. I always thought that was, an interesting change and something that's caught on with a lot of companies. So it's interesting.
I like it. I like it. Well, now, I'm going to go back to the people side of it.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've seen multiple times, I'll give you one example. There was one time there was an individual that asked their CHR, or Chief Human Resource Officer, when are you going to put something in diversity inclusion? And man, that's such a hot topic right now, whether it be, you look at it good or bad, right? And they said, I think it's something to the almost exact what we're not. We're not going to do this at all. But then another leader comes in that this individual reported to, and they have a big diversity inclusion push, right? All of a sudden, it's like, oh my goodness, this is, so the same individual would then go, this is the latest and greatest. We're going to go 100% with that. The only problem is everyone that saw the other answers thought, you just said you're not ever going to do anything with this stuff, man. And so how do you help leaders stay consistent and to see the longer term impacts of answers that they give? But also, once they do a flip like that, how do they wrinkle? Smooth out the creases, if you will, and get everyone really on board.
Yeah.
Because if you think of change, a lot of people that I've consulted with have said, we're not going to change, man. We're not going to do anything. But then when something that it comes up, all of a sudden they're the biggest backers of whatever it might be, whether it be D&I, whether it be something technology-based, what have you.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like external environment driven. Like you see a lot of downward pressure from changes that, government makes. A good example is recently with Juneteenth, the African-American holiday in the US. They're making it a federal holiday, which typically makes it a mandated holiday that companies observe at their workplace. Right. So to institute something like that, you see a lot of changes in the background that the government makes that kind of drives some of that. So making it a mandate seems to make a difference. Making it compliance driven and oriented can make it a difference. So just incentivizing or de-incentivizing companies to make a specific change, that really seems to work rather than to just talk about it. So that's one good example that comes to mind. Other times, within an internal organization, you'll see a new executive come in, be it someone in the C-suite or even the CEO, and they want to put their mark or their stamp on the company. Ultimately, when you're brought in at that level, you're being asked to change something. You're asked to solve a problem, whether it's maybe you have cost overruns, or maybe the company is not growing at the rate that it wants to. So more likely than not, they interview someone that can kind of solve that problem.
Right.
So kind of for people to change, below the C-suite, getting that buy-in, commitment, and support at the top to make that change happen is another kind of, it's just another way to kind of push that forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
So really, yeah, it starts at the top, or there may be like an external cause, like a regulatory body or a governmental body that pushes something into play that causes that spark. That's what I've seen work best.
Yeah.
Having some kind of buy-in from a sponsor, if you can call it that.
Like it. I like it. I like it. I like it. And again, I've seen a ton of the stuff that you've been going in both internally and as an external consultant. I still do some of this stuff on the side, so
Sure.
It's fun.
Sure.
But I find it interesting because Gary's in healthcare, and oh my goodness, I mean, you got to share some of this stuff, which you can, if you can.
Yeah.
No. One of the things that has been interesting to track and follow in healthcare is the evolution of the electronic health record, where back in the day everything was paper charting, and then the promise is that this is now going to free up all of our time so that we can spend more time at the bedside and provide more time for direct patient care. And it's been absolutely the opposite. It's now allowed administration and above to micromanage and pull reports and data. And then this is one area where I wonder sometimes where you say sometimes regulation or incentivizing and that type of thing is a good thing, but
yeah,
in my arena, I've actually seen a little bit of the different, where now they say, well, now we've got to have all these programs or initiatives and everything else, because now you can track all this minutia of data. I wonder, have you seen that in some of the other industries where, I think where people are a little jaded because, technology was supposed to be the savior and the answer, and they don't trust it at some point.
It's interesting. I mean, in some ways, when we went into this pandemic and pandemic-induced recession, like people were forced to go 100% digital.
Yeah.
And I remember there being like a boom in Zoom technology, or Zoom video services stock price, or Zoom communications is what they call it. And they have had privacy concerns that they had to mitigate early on about people getting access to video meetings who weren't invited to them. So there has been security issues. There have been cybersecurity issues. I mean, even with the advent of cryptocurrency comes up. Right now, that's, a lot of it, I believe, is a lot of speculation rather than investing. But, that's still trying to find its feet in the markets that we work in, from shopping to retail to, so there's a little bit of stutter there right now. Because, it's my understanding a lot of that, the type of currency is still used in the black market. And that's where it's recognized. But, over and over and over again, it's coming to a head. And IRS, for example, is starting to crack down on it with some of their regulations, and that they want to know if you have cryptocurrency, because obviously, through the IRS, they're trying to figure out how to tax it. Yeah. So, there's an argument there going on. So it's interesting. Like, it seems like, at first it starts with some form of speculation, but over time, some of it really makes it into the mainstream. And, in our particular case, we went from working in person to virtual, where it was forced upon us. And we're still in that space. Most companies are still working virtually as opposed to being in person. And that is working. It seems to be working. a lot of us are working in that capacity. So it's something that, was forced upon us and something that we kind of had to get used to. So, I find that interesting.
I just wondered too, we talk about organizations, we talk about the impact that it has on the people. And I'm just wondering, what kind of recommendations would you have for an individual that is being impacted by change?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, and there are a couple of ways you can look at that. I mean, if someone gets a rift or a reduction in force, if there's some form of turnover, whether voluntary or involuntary, in the form of a termination, that's hard. I've done some presentations around people going through the emotional aspects of change. So there's that. Much of my work is around organization or group change, and getting a project to go from start to finish to go live, and to hypercare or post deployment. So, there's not enough said about, focusing on the people side of change. Sure. Most companies are very, very much, focused on the technology, the technical or process aspects of any sort of business changes. But I think people that have experience, people that have been in the trenches like us, or have some gray hairs before they walk into the room, realize that, managing stakeholders is a full-time job in and of itself.
Oh, it totally is. It totally is.
It is. And it's unrecognized, but it does suck up a lot of time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And with that, managing the stakeholders too, I'm just wondering, how would you go about promoting dialogue? And let me clarify that. Sometimes you have the sales team. They are not going to talk with the other organizations. They just want to make the sales. And then all of a sudden the sales impacts everything the technical people are doing or whoever it might be. And then it causes a whole conundrum, and all of a sudden there's this contention. But this also trickles out into regular life as well. There's always some kind of conflict or differences of opinion. But how do you promote dialogue amongst differing opinions, different disciplines, whatever it might be? Because you know what I mean? Because this is not something that is just isolated in an organization. The ability to have a dialogue impacts the personal life as well.
Yeah, and I mean, that's tough. I think, let's be honest. I mean, getting behind a computer and sending an email to a large set of people doesn't change anything. You'd be lucky if you'd be lucky if they read it, and let alone open it. And if that's just what your change management plan is, you're in trouble. Nothing's to learn anything. I get thousands of emails a day. And some of them, most of them, I may mark them as spam or unsubscribe. So, you make a good point. I'm always big on in-person and press in the flesh. Of course, we don't have that option here. I think the next best thing is building a relationship with someone. As hard as that may be, speaking an executive's language, that's important for me because I'm a consultancy and we are looking for, making sure the relationship is spot on. And so we can continue work. I mean, after all, they're our end client. So building a relationship is really, really important. Talking about their needs, some of that right side up thinking is some of the terminology I've heard. Like, I like to ask what when I'm working with an executive, what's the best way to reach them, or what's their preferred method of communications? Some people prefer text. I prefer just picking up. I don't like to hide behind electronic means. I like to just pick up the phone and talk to people. But you know, a lot of people are just focusing on CYA behavior,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, cover your ass. So they'll send out an email and copy someone just to get it done, but you're not going to build a relationship that way. You
Oh
know,
no.
you're not going to get farther faster. You know, you're not going to. I know one consultant that thinks of thinking the fourth sale first,
Yeah.
trying to build more, trying to build a book of business with a client. You know, it's going to take more than sending them an email. It takes building a relationship with them and knowing what their personality and communication style is.
I gotta share this one thing. I was working with a group one time, and so we're trying to promote this dialogue between all the executive team. And I go, okay, we're going to role play. You're going to engage with me. You're going to have a dialogue with me. We just had a very tough situation here. You're going to have a dialogue with me.
Right.
And I remember he started going on, and I called timeout in the middle of this consultancy. I go, are you using a flipping sales tactic on me? And he goes, yeah, it works all the time. It's not working with me, man. I mean, literally, you can. And this is the beauty about being a consultant, right? You're not internal, so you can call them on it, but you have to call them on it in the right way, right?
Yeah, right.
But then he goes, no, it works. I've seen it 100 times, blah, blah, blah. And so I look at all of his peers, and they go, I ask him, is this working? It's an R-rated rant of how it wasn't working. And so to your point, it isn't about a process. It's not about a program. It's about talking with the individual at their level instead of just barfing it up, right?
True. It's true. And it's tough because a used car salesman, you know, we think of a used car salesman in the U.S. and how that's reflected. And, you know, look, the U.S. has a big culture of that, of selling, where, you know, a lot of the buyers may not feel like they're being heard.
Yes.
And, you know, that's important. It gets underestimated, and it really goes a long way with your client.
It really does. You just can't read a book by its cover, right? I go way off tangent. I'm sorry to both of you guys, but
no, not at all.
I have a friend over here, and this doesn't have anything to do with change management, but it has everything to do with building that relationship. He's a big dude, but he purposely dresses like a bum. He's a millionaire, and he goes in gym shorts and a tank top, and he has a gym bag. And, you know, so he'll go into these car dealerships and he'll go, hey, can I see this? And almost without fail, they don't really engage with the dude. And then what he'll do is he'll go to each salesman until he finds one that relates with the individual, really understands the need. The bag is full of cash. And he does this over and over because he's buying cars for his business, and he does it straight with cash. And so, I mean, the word is out. He can't do that anymore because they go, hey, look for the big dude with this bag of cash. But it's interesting because sometimes I think that change doesn't happen because we're not willing to make the sacrifices to get over ourselves and our own opinion to be able to have that. And as one individual on one of the movies said, my hypocrisy knows no bounds, because I know I don't do that as well. It's a hard thing to overcome.
It really is. And it's tough. It's tough because when you're in organizations, like, time is incredibly finite, right? You're on the clock and you have specific deadlines, and there are dependencies to meet specific deliverables to meet those deadlines, or specific dependencies to meet deliverables that speak to a specific outcome. So when you get on someone's calendar, you want to use that time wisely. and you want to make sure you're adding value for your client ultimately. So you really have to massage the people side very carefully.
Yeah.
I think, the best people I've seen do this, really, especially leaders or people that manage others, that's situational leadership. I can't say I'm great at it, like I was always big on values-based leadership, but it just makes you look stubborn. But I think people that know how to shook and jive with their employees,
Yeah,
and kind of connect with them on a one-on-one basis, I think they make better people leaders than, say, someone with an iron fist.
yeah.
But that's my humble opinion.
Well, Gary, didn't you go through something like this where you were time bound on something, trying to implement something? I can't remember. Was that you? It might have been
For
something.
me?
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't know, but I I do I do kind of resonate with what Deepak is saying. Is it just seems to me that the most effective leadership is not a grab by the neck and pull people along. It just seems like more and more, especially with the, you're talking earlier about how technology over time things kind of fall out and trend, and they become the new norm. And I think one of the negative aspects of that is kind of like with social media, where everybody has an opinion on everything and everything has to be stated and that type of stuff. And so on a leadership perspective of that, you're dealing with people now that feel they have to have a voice on everything.
Yes.
And need to express that voice. And I don't know, it just seems like the people that have kind of adapted to that that system as far as leadership goes now are the ones that kind of follow, or let me be there as a support, give you the processes, the equipment, everything you need to be successful. So that now you're kind of directing their what they're saying, so to speak, as opposed to dragging them along. I think the days of successful leadership by being at the top and telling everybody to follow you are rapidly disappearing.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Right now, it's just strange what we're coming out of. I know we're still climbing out of the pandemic. There's like I believe they call it the Delta variant that's hitting Latin America and India quite a bit. So we're trying to figure things out, especially here in the US, and things are opening up and people are just kind of sick of being indoors. You're seeing so we had a lot of layoffs in Q2 of 2020, but now a lot of people are just leaving organizations left and right for other opportunities, be it what some of us are doing here in this room and opening up their own boutique or their own firm, or just going to work for another organization or just finding a new calling. It seems like a lot of that's going on in the market today. And it makes me wonder why and what the drivers of that is.
It's funny because we're approaching, both of you were down. I'm a 9/11 survivor. I think you're a 9/11 survivor too, right? You were right there.
I was around. Yeah, I was working for a Canadian bank, Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce. And I was I was doing some junior HR generalist work coming out of Columbia, and 9/11 happened. One of the companies I was working for was in one of the towers. And I remember I was doing some junior HR generalist work, and I was out at a campus doing some campus recruiting and hiring for the banking's kind of analyst position. I remember driving back from a colleague from one of the universities and hearing it on the news. Some colleagues were telling me they were running out of the building that day and they saw one of the tires right on the street. So that was a surreal moment.
It is. And the only reason I bring that, I mean, I still can't believe it's almost 20 years since that day, but
that's right.
When I look at how it made me think, I thought, I don't want to chase the dollar anymore, right? Or I have a higher purpose, higher cause. And
and it's harder to do that the older you get. I mean, it's fun and sexy, when you're in your 20s and 30s. I mean, I'll turn 45 this month, so
Damn,
yeah, I know. But, to do it day in and day out for a king dollar, it gets old,
Yeah.
it gets,
Yeah.
now I'm trying to find a little more balance with it.
Yes.
Right now, I'm doing a lot more work in the health and life sciences area.
Yeah.
You mentioned providers and the Epic system or an EHR. I'm working with a pharmaceutical company, and they're implementing a new process and a new system around kind of like best in class analytics and artificial intelligence and machine learning, because that technology is there today and people want to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So, things are continuing to change at a rapid pace. So it's just interesting to watch and kind of live in this day and age to see it and happen right before you.
Yeah.
Another good example, at least on the consumer side, as opposed to the business side, there's unfortunately, for whatever reason, my wife and I, we live in a co-op in New York. There's a no pet policy. And, that's unfortunate because I think we've grown to love dogs.
Right.
We ended up getting a robot dog. We got a robot dog, and it's by Sony. So I think it was expensive, and we just thought it'd be nice to have something like that in the house. And it was by Sony, so it was a name brand that we trusted. And when we saw it, we just thought it was an opportunity to bring a robot pet into the house. And it's been interesting, it's using all the latest technology from artificial intelligence, it barks at you, to robotics, it can do tricks. It's got a docking station. It'll go to sleep. It'll wake up when you wake up.
This is disturbing on so many levels.
It's kind of neat. It's kind of neat. So, so I try to stay on top of these trends. I think that's whether on the consumer side or on the enterprise/business side. I try to stay on top of these trends because, it's happening. It's happening here and now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not to mention, all the push around electric vehicles, that's big. And just about every company's coming out with their own version.
They are.
I mean, you have the Mustang, for example, that's come out with an electric vehicle. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Yep. They're even making a Raptor.
Oh,
sorry, Gary. Go ahead, man.
Oh no, I just said that. Yeah, it's intriguing because now, it used to be that you would have a manufacturing company, like say like a Dodge or a Chevy or whatever, that then brings in technology. Whereas it seems like one of the big shifts is now, like Apple, you come from the technology side, and then you bring in the other half of it. They talk about, eventually Apple will most likely have an EV at some point because, and it kind of makes sense because a mass majority of that entity is now technology focused, whereas the nuts and bolts are now secondary.
I think part of it is, and I have a networking group in New York. I just had an event. We used to do that in person in Manhattan. We've been doing virtual events. It's called Business and Technology of Greater New York. And the purpose of that is to engage business and technology leaders of Greater New York to talk about their best practices and opportunities. One of the things that come up over and over is a lot of the technology departments were seen as cost centers, right? They would do, desktop support, managed IT, but in a lot of cases, a lot of these companies are leading with technology, like that's part of their strategic plan. And I think you're seeing a lot of that today. I mean, there's a whole new marketplace because of that. So I find that kind of fascinating because it's a profit center now. Like you'd find at a bank, where sales and trading is a profit center. So you see more of that now today than ever before.
That's insane, right? It's so insane. All these changes that have happened over the course of at least the decades that we've been in school, but also just that are that are brought upon by a pandemic.
Yeah.
Brought upon
Well, that
by
too.
unseens. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I have a feeling you're going to be busy for a long time, Deepak.
Yeah, I mean, being, you know, I didn't plan to kind of go in the enterprise technology space,
Right.
but, you know, combining kind of change management methodologies and approaches with enterprise technology adoption, process and technology adoption, because it changes a lot of departments, whether Maurice talked about sales, marketing, and account management and CRM, or, you know, HR, back office HR processes like self-service, recruiting, benefits administration. It's just been an opportunity for the space I work in.
Yeah. So you're heavily involved in technology integration with these large companies, getting them to make the change. Right. My question is as an individual this is what you do. All right, give me top 5 or so technology apps, whatever, that you use to manage your personal change.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, you know, we're all working from home, so you know, I put a premium on productivity, right? I mean, I'm a consultant. Being productive is important. So top 5 apps, you know, I've got like 3 calendars. I integrate them all in the Google Calendar. You know, just like bam. So I try not to miss meetings there. Right now, this pharma company's, you know, they're a Microsoft shop. So from Teams to SharePoint to you know, I mean, Teams is a really nice integrated product where you can launch a calendar, have a chat, send an email, kind of, you know, upload a file for access, all in kind of one place. You can't do that with Zoom. Yeah. I know that's more on the enterprise, but I'd say, you know, Google Calendar, of course, on the productivity. I'm still on the paper big to-do list.
Yes, love it.
You know what's so funny? Can I give you a recent example? I went to a tech. You know, tech is really big in New York. You know, it's probably second to San Francisco, but you know, with everyone kind of migrating to different places, it's less about the geography now and more about, you know, who's using what. I think, you know, LinkedIn has been great for networking and business development. I think that's one there. I think, you know, productivity around calendaring with Google Calendar, I think that's been good. Right. The example I was going to give you, I went to a big tech forum in New York, and one woman was, it was like 50,000 people. One woman introduced a to-do list. And I thought that was funny. And she spelled it T-U-D-U-X, to do, right? And I said, and she's like, it's a cloud-based to-do list. Before everyone just kind of started incorporating it into whatever they're using today. For example, tasks is something that Google uses. So, you know, she thought it was innovative and, you know, it was a cloud-based to-do list before, you know, kind of that space opened up on its own. So I raised my hand and I said, what if you have no internet access? How am I going to write that action item down then? You know, and everyone was silent. Some were joking. Some were like, she didn't really have an answer, you know, but I was like, don't expect me to buy like this new technology, you know, if I can't use it, you know, day in and day out. So, I mean, there's some things I still, for example, I tried going digital with like note taking, but where I was using a notebook called Rocketbook from Amazon. I'd take notes and then take a picture and then it would turn into a PDF doc, but it didn't quite kind of work. So I'm still kind of used to using a red and black notebook.
Yes.
And they're just so easy to use, you know, and I can always go over and, you know, frankly, like the technology with Rocketbook wasn't good enough to like get through my chicken scratch. So it kind of didn't know what to make of it, you know, when it tried to make sense of it. And it tried to use like OCR technology to make it readable and legible. So some of the technology is not quite there though. But you know, some of it, like I do use an Echo Dot, you know, for you know, to speak to Alexa. As you know, I'm part of that Amazon ecosystem in that regard. You know, I find stuff like that. It's incredibly cheap.
Yes.
And you can put it everywhere in your house. You can ask it the weather. Mostly we use it. I use it for music, weather, and you know, the time, or you know, I get to put my phone down and set an alarm clock, you know, if I need a nap. I find stuff like that real easy. So, I mean, it's definitely here to stay,
Yeah.
you know, and people are finding more and more innovative ways to use consumer technology as such.
Well, I think there's an important lesson there that I take from that is, it's not always good just to integrate technology for the sake of having technology.
No,
sometimes good old paper and pen still is the best way to go, even for someone like you that is very tech savvy, that's what you do for a living.
I do. I mean, like, you got to find the right balance. Oh, you know, buying a robot dog, yes. You know, using it to upload my notes, no. No, but yeah, you really got to find the right balance. I mean, there's so many interesting technologies out today. You know, just last year, Bose came out with a set of sunglasses that
I remember those. Yes.
Did you see that? It's amazing. So it's sunglasses, and it's, you know, they're great with music and speakers, and so the speakers are attached to the sunglasses. So the speakers actually go on and connect to your phone once you put the sunglasses on, and before you know it, you're listening to music, which is so neat, you know, when you put on a pair of sunglasses. So stuff like that I find really interesting.
Yeah. I asked the same question you asked the to-do woman. What if it's dark outside?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's still some things I use paper and pen with. So
I think the big things I'm taking away from this call is, as far as change and anything else, it's keeping it simple. It's relating with people, and getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah,
that's pretty much what I'm. And this is what I love about talking to the different guests, but especially you today. You've seen it. You've seen it impact other organizations and people, and even yourself. So
yeah,
wanted to thank you.
And this is even just a little lesson in itself, because Deepak and I have never met before.
Never.
And getting to know each other at this level, you know, the things we have talked about. I mean, yeah, we're using technology in a great way, but on top, this would have never happened over an email, over, you know, that type of thing. So I mean, there's so many big wins that are still part of this whole equation, but it really does, like Marie said, seem to boil down to those personal face-to-face interactions.
Yeah, I agree. You know, in New York, they're using an app to check if people have been vaccinated to let you in the venues.
What?
I thought that was everywhere, but it's kind of interesting. So I have it here, and you know, some you know, when you want to go listen to some music or even some restaurants, it just tells you right there. Let me see. Here it is. There it is. Can you see that?
Oh yeah.
And there's a QR code attached.
Oh my God.
Let me see if I can see that. And it tells you when my vaccine expires. Give you a QR code. So, you know, when you go to a venue, whether a restaurant or a music venue or a dining venue or a theater venue, and they're still trying to open that up here in Broadway, they'll take a shot of the QR code and let you in to let them know that you've been fully vaccinated.
Interesting.
I can see that your birthday's next week, man.
Yeah, right. It says my birthday. It says when my vaccine expires. You know, there must be booster shots that they're coming out with. Goodness. So, you know, a lot of interesting things that they can do, you know, with both consumer and enterprise technology.
Love it. Well, Deepak, thank you for your time and sharing your wisdom. This has been, once again, enlightening as always when I speak with you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to keeping in touch.